We are children of a pseudo culture. It's quite a shock after all the years to find out that I was raised in something that wasn't a true culture, but was a pseudo culture. And actually, I didn't really know there was a difference. I thought you were just brought up in a culture. I didn't know there was a difference between cultures. And then I found out that actually there is. And when I say we were brought up in a pseudo culture, what I mean is it's fragmented into different domains. So there's no overall story that holds it all together. That's why it's a pseudo culture. In a true culture, they've got an overarching story where they know their place in the cosmos. For example, when I stayed in the rainforest, the tribal people, they're new with their story. It was a coherent story that fitted them into the cosmos. All their activities, everything that they did in their lives and across the stages of their lives fitted into this huge coherent story where they felt held. It's amazing, really amazing. In our Western culture, we don't have that. We just got fragments. So it's all got very complicated. We all feel that complicated lives. And then we look at the fragments. Economics is a fragment. It's a domain all to itself. Science is a domain all to itself, a fragment. Religion is a fragment. Ecology is a fragment. Politics is a fragment. So these are all fragments, but they don't knit into a kind of a coherent story for us. They're all telling us, they're different voices telling us different things that don't knit together. And we're just trying to make sense of the world. We're trying to make sense that the world that I live in makes sense. And then we find, that it doesn't. And it can't, because it's so fragmented. Now, when we're young, we're kind of living on the promise of the future that when we get successful, or when we get married or get a house and settle down, at some point in the future it's all going to come together. We feel when we're young, okay, it's fragmented, but it's going to make sense later in life. When you're in your midlife and later years, with all your life experience, you find out, you discover, no, this is not all of a sudden going to come together. So it's a real shock. But in some ways, it shouldn't be a shock, because it's a fragmented pseudo culture. So it's never going to make sense. But in not making sense, it has real effects on us. So in our lives, we might find ourselves just disconnected from feeling disconnected from life, or constantly rushing, constantly, like, we're never stopping, because if you stop to think, you kind of go, oh wow, you begin to think of the fragments and the whole thing, that it doesn't make sense. It's not good. It's not a good feeling. Or you might just feel overwhelmed. You're overwhelmed by life, and that's because they're just all these fragments. There's no coherent story for you to just relax. You can relax in. When I was with the tribe in West Papua, they just lived, 40,000 years they have lived with this coherent story. And so you just relax, you feel held in this web of meaning. It's really incredible. So we have, as humans, in our psyche, we have this desire to be in a living cosmos. To feel that story of a living, interconnected cosmos where the whole of life makes sense, and that you also feel you belong. So that's what we all desire. We desire that story. And so over the next few videos, I'm going to bring you through that story, that an overarching story actually does exist. It's not something we're told. We're just left with all these fragments, but an overarching story does really exist, and a lot of it's based on science. Science is telling us that we live in an interconnected world now, and a lot of evidence of that across the land, the seas, and the galaxies. So all the contents are there to build a story, and one that you can feel you're in a living cosmos, because we can't go back to an indigenous way of living And for me, I'm quite analytical, so I need to have some basis of what the story is. I can't just believe. I need to have some basis. So I've been able to put together the science of it, and the story is quite remarkable. So I'll be sharing that in the next few videos. Please like and share this. I think anybody in the Western world would benefit from it, because we're all living in a pseudo culture. So it's really, really important to first understand that it's not a true culture, that it is a pseudo culture. If you think about it, a lot of things just begin to make sense, because it's not a whole story. It's not an overarching story. So you'll never feel held in that story. So first understand that you're living in a pseudo culture. And next, as I say, over the next few videos, I'll be bringing you through a story that fits together in a modern world. Thank you for watching.